Moin und herzlich willkommen zum Energiezone Podcast, den Energiespezialfolgen bei Kassenzone. Heute zu Gast Edgeir Aksnes. Habt ihr wahrscheinlich noch nie gehört, kommt aus Oslo in Norwegen und hat Tibber gegründet. Das ist ein Anbieter, der es ermöglicht, Strom zum jeweils aktuellen Börsenstrompreis zu konsumieren. Und die sind damit in Norwegen gestartet, obwohl es schon viele andere Anbieter gab, unter anderem normalen Stromanbieter, die variable Preise zum Börsenstrompreis angeboten haben. Und ich dachte immer, das wäre der Novum gewesen. Stimmt aber gar nicht. Die Plattform, die damit bauen und die Art und Weise, wie dann die Geräte angeschlossen werden, die dann immer dann verbrauchen, wenn der Strompreis günstig ist, das ist deren USP. Die haben relativ viel Geld eingesammelt, die starten in Deutschland ordentlich durch. Wir haben über die verschiedenen Probleme beim Thema Smart Meter Rollout und flexible Strompreise gesprochen. Also für Energiezone-Fans sicherlich ein Highlight. Und ich bin jetzt kurz davor, mir auch so eine Tibber-Infrastruktur zu Hause einzubauen, weil das, was er so erzählt und wie das funktioniert, das macht schon extrem viel Sinn. Viel Spaß mit Edgeir. Ed, welcome to the Kassenzone and Energiezone or Energiezone podcast. You're a guest I've long hoped for, because in like many episodes of Energiezone, we've talked about the pricing schemes in Germany and how much better it would be when like every consumer of electricity, commercial consumers and private consumers, would have the opportunity to consume when it's cheapest and not to consume when it's expensive. And in many of those conversations, your name came up, or your company's name came up as a potential solution. And then I started looking into this, and now I'm even thinking that might be a solution for my private case, but we will figure it out during the podcast. Welcome. Please introduce yourself and Tibber for a minute.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure, and to share a few words about me, I'm coming from the software world. I've been basically running software businesses my whole career. And 6 years ago, me and Daniel, my co-founder at Tibber, we started on this journey. And our thinking was quite simple, I would say. We wanted to create a tool so that you as a customer, you can take charge of energy yourself. You get the transparency about what energy consumption goes to, transparency in prices, and as a part of that, we also put together an energy contract where we take no markup ourselves. We just pass on the real cost of energy, of hourly prices of energy, and put all of this in together in an app. So today we have the Tibber app. We have a lot of capabilities of making your home smarter. And that's where we are, and also quite vital is that we started off in the Nordics, Norway and Sweden, and a few years ago we started our expansion across Europe, where Germany was one of the markets that we identified as a huge potential in terms of doing something smarter about energy for households. So that's where we are today.
Can you give us an overview? What's the difference between the markets? Like you started in Norway. I think you're also active in Sweden.
Yes.
Do they also have just one pricing scheme in the whole country? Is Germany a unique thing? Are we way behind when it comes to smart metering? And just give us an overview, because obviously when you started in Norway, there must be a similar problem or a similar challenge.
That is true. When we started off in Norway, I think we can compare when it comes to smart metering and hourly prices, it's quite comparable to where Germany is today. When we started off and launched the product in 2017, we had no smart metering in Norway, and then this got rolled out over the next years. So there's a clear similarity there, and we see that when we launched our hourly product in Germany, we saw a huge pickup rate in terms of interest, and basically a lot of people who had high prices or fixed prices, they started to look into, is it possible to get it? And then we enabled it through Tibber Pulse, which then became the tool in order to enable smart metering in Germany. So we basically needed to make a hardware hack in order to make that come through. So that's quite comparable. But what is different is that the Nordics is split into many price areas. So Norway alone is 5 different price areas. Sweden is 4 different price areas. Denmark is 2. And whereas Germany, on the other hand, it's one price for the whole country. I would say that's a clear advantage. But at the same time, for you as a customer, the price is still different between you where you live and other places. So Berlin, Hamburg, Munich, they all have different prices because the grid part of the energy price is different from market to market. So the price consists of a grid fee and the actual energy price. That is similar across whole of Europe. But then these structures are slightly different from country to country and from region to region. So I can clearly see a lot of similarities, and I can clearly see that the trajectory that Germany will now enter is probably quite comparable to Norway.
But within the different price zones in the Nordics, like 5 price zones in Norway alone, the price there is still fixed. So if I'm living in a price zone in Oslo, let's say my fixed price is like 30 cents per kilowatt hour, and you can tell me what is the real price there, then regardless when I consume, in the morning, in the evening, in the summer, in the winter, it's always the same price. That is true, or is even in the price zones, are there different prices based on consumption and production?
Well, the prices are everywhere in Europe. The prices are set by what we call the whole price market. In around here, we call this the spot price. So it's a new price every hour. That is actually, and that's a dynamic tariff. It's a real hourly and dynamic way of pricing energy. And the reason for that is what you hint at. There needs to be a perfect balance between consumption and production at every point in time. And then the other point you're bringing up, dynamic versus fixed prices. So for the most of Germany, people are used to fixed prices. So you have the same price across the whole year. In many markets, including the Nordics, more than half of all customers are following hourly prices or dynamic prices. So the old regime of having the same price across the whole year is about to be phased out because customers are willing and more than willing to jump over to a dynamic price that is following the actual price of energy. And why is that? Well, the reason is that if you go on to an hourly price or dynamic price, you are able to influence your energy bill way more than if you had the same price across the whole year. So, and then there are a few cultural or historical reasons as well. We can probably dwell into that, but it's several different reasons. So if you look upon from the customer's point of view, a lot of people are choosing a fixed price in Germany, whereas in the Nordics, you have variable prices. And then, correct to what you said, within that geographical area, everybody has the same price, but that price can either be fixed or variable per hour.
But how do they do that in the Nordics? So in Germany, there's only Tibber from what I know to get into this flexible price scheme. How do they do this in the Nordics? If there's 50% of the households are already running on a flexible price, that must have been possible without Tibber even before. Is there the smart meter rollout already done, and are traditional providers offering this already?
Yes, I think that's a good point. When we started working on hourly prices, a lot of infrastructure was already in place in order for us to start digging into that. So in Sweden, for instance, smart meters had been rolled out, but they had not been put into use. So they had rolled out smart meters to the whole market, but just very few customers had enabled to do hourly billing. So when we started up in Sweden in 2018, give or take, then what we did was to enable hourly pricing of energy based on the meter that you actually had installed. And then we did the same thing in Norway once smart meters were rolled out in 2019 and enabled hourly tariffs there. So we can see the same thing across Europe, that the infrastructure is in place, several places, whereas in Germany, there has been a lack of official smart meters for a long time, and they have been planning a rollout for a long time. But now, ultimately, as a consequence of the energy crisis we've been through, things seems to be accelerating quite a bit. But for Germany, for Tibber to work, we then pushed out Tibber Pulse as a way to smartify an old meter. So that's the difference there.
But you need one of the more or less modern meters. I saw the Tibber Pulse, and you're like reading it based on some of the there's like a way how the meters are working, like it's working with light. It's kind of you put it like a flashlight on top. It's kind of crazy, and I think I've spoken about it in an older Energiezone episode. But it's okay. But you're reading it kind of, you're getting it out of the most meters. I saw not every meter is like working with it, and then you're using this information as like that is your input variable, like to see when the consumer is using how much energy. And because the consumer agreed with you on a flexible pricing, and you see, okay, he was consuming 20 kilowatt hours during the night from like 1 a.m. to 3 a.m., then the wholesale price was 10 cents. So he get charged like 10 cents times 20, 2 euros. Instead of like getting charged 50 cents times 20, then 10 euros when he was consuming the same energy over the day. Is this correct, more or less, how you're doing it?
That is correct. So on a lot of the meters in Germany, on most of the meters, there is a small light thing. It's actually not light. It's the same technology, infrared, that used to be in remote controls. Mm. So it communicates both ways. So what we're doing is that Tibber Pulse is simply asking the meter, what is the meter reading right now? And then we get the same meter reading that you have on the display. We get out from that port. So that's basically how it works. And then, as you say, during 1 hour, we figured out how much was consumed during that hour. If that was 1 kilowatt hour and the price was 10 cents, then 10 cents is what you pay. And the beauty of that is that what we have seen lately is that there has even been minus prices in Germany, including all the grid fees and legal fees and so on and so forth.
And grid fees, legal fees is like roughly 22 cents, right? Regardless how expensive energy is, like 22 cents is like that what you pay in taxes, and all this grid fee stuff. Okay.
Give or take. That might vary from Hamburg to Berlin to Munich, etc. But give or take, that's correct.
But to stick with it, but the flexible price is in Germany, it's always the same. If I have a negative price in Hamburg, then we will have the same negative price for energy in Munich at the same time. Correct?
That is correct. Okay. So if the negative price is negative enough, then including the grid fee, the overall price becomes negative. And then what happens? Will you get paid out money for the energy you consume? Well, the answer is actually yes. If you take a look at only that period, but obviously, unfortunately, a month is way longer. So ultimately, you need to pay for the energy. But let's assume in theory that the prices were negative for a full month. You would actually get paid money for all of those hours. So that's how it works.
Okay.
Sounds like magic, but trust me, it's
not. I totally get it. I think the ones that are like following the Kassenzone and Energiezone stuff, they totally understand. But then my question is, so if this was already possible without Tibber in Norway or Sweden before you started your company in 2016, and I thought you were even able attracting a lot of like venture capital money. So what is then the core USP? Because when I learned about you, I thought, okay, your USP is like doing this pulse thing and then like adding your Tibber platform on top. But now I learned that was just a hack, or is just a hack to overcome the smart meter rollout in Germany, the lack of smart meter rollout. So, but when you started like in Sweden, now 7 years ago, what was your USP? So why could you convince people to get away from their old energy provider and say, I use Tibber now because ABC? What is this ABC?
So I think one fundamental thing about Tibber is that we're not really an energy company. We do provide energy as a result that we want to give you the best tools for you to control, monitor, and basically get on top of energy consumption at home. So our thinking was that we want to create that best tool. And what is that best tool? First, you need to understand what energy costs and understand how you use energy. And then we want to use technology so that you can automatically save energy. One of the things, we provided a lot of different features for that, but one of the things is something we call smart charging, which makes you able to connect your Tesla or your BMW i3 or whatever kind of EV you have, or wallbox, into Tibber. And then what we do is that we send schedules over to this equipment so that we start saving energy for you automatically on that price. So what we did was that not just did we provide an app, but we provided you with a tool so you can take charge of end use yourself. And nobody else had done that. So our business model is basically linked together with the customer. We're not providing you the energy contract with the purpose of us profiting from energy consumption, because we take zero profit from the energy consumption that we have over the energy bill. So we have zero profit from that. But what we earn on is a fixed price model. So we have a subscription-based model, same way as Spotify. So we earn like 3 or 4 euros a month. We earn money on our technology and so on, but we never ever profit from the consumption. So we were coming into the market with a different mindset. So to provide a tool and to provide an app and provide technology for you to save energy instead of trying to sell as much energy as possible, that has been the classical model. So I think a lot of people realize that in terms of the way we communicated, the way we unleashed a lot of features, because what we have done is basically to constantly unleash a lot of features for you and your house to save on energy and basically use technology for that purpose.
And I have a lot of questions now. How did it work then for the other energy providers? So when they offered flexible energy tariffs before Tibber, but no tooling, so how would a normal household then use a flexible tariff if there was no tooling? How did it work?
And that comes to kind of the core of the question. So you as a customer, you didn't really have, if you didn't have the tool, you weren't able to reap the benefits of hourly pricing.
Yes, agree.
Because that way you would be like blindfolded. You didn't know what the energy price was. You didn't know how your house was consuming. So when we did this, we figured out, obviously we need to have an energy tariff, a dynamic energy tariff as a part of this. But the most important thing is the tool, so that you get in control of this. And you have full overview of what's going on. So we saw that hourly prices had been attempted before, but they hadn't been becoming popular because of the lack of, a hammer or a screwdriver in order to have the tool that you need in order to make the job done.
Okay, a lot of nails, but no hammer. Okay, and
You could say that, yeah.
and what is the just like for like comparison's sake, what is the standard price today a Norwegian household pays on a kilowatt hour? Just to have, because in Germany we're paying now somewhere between 30 and 40 cents per kilowatt hour in most of the tariffs. But what is it in Norway?
30 and 40 cents. So today it's around 10 to 20 cents on average throughout the year. But this does vary up and down, but give or take.
So it's 60 to 70%, 50 to 70% cheaper than in Germany. That's a lot. That's definitely
a lot.
But other things are very expensive in Norway, if I remember correctly.
It's a lot of other things.
So, okay, then let's go back to the household thing, because I have many like devices in my household, for example, that consume a lot of energy, and where I don't need energy the moment I plug it into the grid, but I can like manage it. Let's start with a summer thing, which is a pool. So obviously the pool has also a heating pump, and usually it's only running when the solar panels produce enough energy. But let's say over the year it consumes 5,000 kilowatt hours in energy, which then is translated into like heating energy. So this 5,000 kilowatt hours, I'm 100% sure I have an option that helps me to have like a much more flexible or flexible consumption. Let's say I need 8 hours a day heating. So that is what the heating pump needs in order to maintain the temperature. I can do it during the day when the solar panels are up. I can do it like during the night. How would your system help me then to make this happen? Because I remember during the night, even in the summer when there's some wind, and over the weekend, there's lots of energy in the grid, which results in negative pricing. Would you then give me kind of a power adapter that is connected to the Tibber network and that only activates when the price is low enough, and activates even when the price is too high, but knows, hey, I need like 8 hours a day, otherwise it's too cold in Alex's pool. So it's a simple thing and at first glance, but if you look into the details, there's a couple of like if-else things that needs to be considered. So can you do this?
On pools in specific, we haven't done that part. What we've done is concentrated around a few other use cases that are the most frequent one around in Northern Europe. So number one is heating. It could be, heat pump is quite equivalent.
But my heating is also a heat pump. It's more or less
exactly.
The same setup.
So it's based on temperature, right? Yes.
Yeah.
So we do it with heating, so different kind of heating system, heat pumps, etc. We do it with EVs, electric cars, and we're also expanding in the landscape of batteries. So let's take a couple of points from your question there. So how do we operate it? Well, we believe in an open ecosystem. So that means that whatever you have from before, we would love you to be able to connect that to Tibber without you needing to buy anything new. You shouldn't buy any new hardware. You shouldn't buy any new devices or stuff like that. So today we have many of those integration partners in place. So we have Samsung, we're working with Toshiba, Mitsubishi when it comes to heat pumps, and a number of others. And the same goes with wall boxes and electric cars and so on and so forth. So we've been building an ecosystem. So in our app, you can find a lot of these brands, and then you can connect what you have from beforehand. So that's principle number one. So hopefully, if you have one of those, you don't need to buy anything. But obviously, you can also buy this on our Tibber store. It's a marketplace we have. Now, the other part of what you said, how do we control this? Because it looks simple. Use energy when the price is low, but and avoid it when the price is high. And that requires a lot of algorithms, basically computer code, in order for this to work. And the way it works is that once you have connected like a heat pump, it starts learning the behavior of your home so that it knows how much of the heating is affected by the sun, by the outdoor temperature, and so on, in order to get to a comfortable level. Let's say that in your living room, you want to have 22 degrees. So what we're calculating is how fast temperature is rising and decreasing based on weather conditions, based on the temperature outdoor, and based on how your heating system works. So there's actually quite a lot of stuff going on in the background. So the only thing you need to set is 22 degrees in your living room, and then the system is starting to learn this based on, it's called thermal thermal coefficients. So basically, it just figures out how much heating is being stored in the walls of your home and in the floor and so on and so forth.
But okay, so I would assume that like most of the old like water heaters in the basement or like even heating pumps or water pumps, whatever, they are not smart yet. Yep. They just like they get a signal, please go or please stop, and the signal is like not just given like with something smart. It's just like energy is off and on. More or less. That's how it's working these days. And all like the sensor stuff you're talking about, like how warm is my living room, how warm is the kitchen, whatever. This can be done with smart home appliances. Even it's really cheap these days. So you can have like your smart home gateway. We talked with the CTO of Hornbach about it. So you can put like sensors in all of your rooms, and those gateways are usually even capable of pushing the data through an API, so Tibber can read it. So you can read my room. But still my question is, so I would need kind of a power plug adapter that helps me with on and off, heating pump on and off based on the temperature in the heating rooms. And for that, I would need a very, very, very powerful power adapter because it's not working with the stuff you're getting for like 10 euros from Amazon, because the heating pumps consume often, I don't know, 4,000 watts, so much more than like a standard adapter could manage. You would need the information from the smart home devices, and that's a lot. That's a lot, obviously. But if this two things, kind of a power adapter that can start and stop things, and some sensor data is available in the Tibber app, then I can manage everything in the Tibber app. Then it becomes my smart home energy dashboard, I would say. Is it how you look at it, or it's different?
Yeah, I think that's that's a good description. We look upon Tibber as a smart energy platform or a smart energy management software for your home. So you can manage all of your devices. Hopefully, a lot of people can have a way simpler setup than the one you described. That's what we're striving for because obviously new heat pumps, they have a lot of them have direct connectivity. So for them, it's plug and play. However, if you have an old one, you might need to retrofit some equipment. And then we have a list of different recommendations of what you can do. Getting back to your main point, what we do there is basically kind of smart home, but in a very simple way, but with a focus on energy. We're not doing anything around automation or automatically starting up your coffee maker or shutting the doors to your home. We don't do that kind of stuff. We only focus on doing energy because we figured out that in order to make that really work, it's a hard problem to solve. It's a lot of complexity. But also in order to make this available, we need to invest a lot in making the technology simple to use. Making technology usable is quite simple, but making it usable for a lot of people, that is the hard thing. So basically making it simple enough to use.
Okay, let's forget about the pool and like sauna and whatever. You have like a huge energy consumption. Let us look at something that every household has usually in the basement, which is a water heater. And the water heater is just like providing like warm water, like for showering or for your dishes, whatever. It's usually like a 100 to 200 liter tank.
It's a tank. It's a battery, actually.
Yeah. It's a huge battery, and it's usually responsible for almost 50% of the energy consumption in a household. Apart from heating energy, I would separate it from like the heating pump and because. And I'm asking you this because like the exchange rate for households into like energy pumps or like heating pumps that would take like another like 20 years here in Germany. Like, it's only 1 to 2% of of all households will do renovation, isolation, heating pumps. So most of the households still stick with at least with the water heater. And the water heater is like the main device for energy consumption in most of the households because you'd like to like a warm shower is, I would say, 2 kilowatt hours already, right?
Yes.
Could be like even 5 kilowatt hours. So, and it would totally make, and this, in those water heaters, there might be a range, let's say 60 degrees to 75 degrees, which is like already 50% of the energy in this huge battery. And all of them are super old. I'm pretty sure you can get like a sensor, a smart home sensor connected to the internet, that gives you over an API the temperature now. Could be even a sensor you're like wiring around a tube. So it just reads like the external temperature. And I'm pretty sure you can put a power adapter in between just to put it on and off, because usually those things are super stupid. They do have they just like heat up to like 70 degrees always, regardless if you're using it or not. And therefore that's a huge potential for energy saving. Then my question is, if I was able to connect this with a smart meter, like the Tibber Pulse, and only put the heating energy into it when it's below 60 degrees, because I don't know, my son or my daughter, they were showering like for an hour without looking on the energy bill, or because our power is like so cheap, so I can go now from 60 to 70 degrees and warm it up right now, because usually isolation is good enough that it can store a lot of the energy. So this alone is such a huge use case. Nobody can solve here right now. And I would not hope that the main advice is to change all water heaters, because it's super expensive. A new big water heater is somewhere between 1,000 and 3,000 euros. Nobody has the time. There's no personnel changing this stuff, but making it smarter already solves a big part of the problem. So, Ed, please help us.
Indeed. I think what you're describing there is a perfect example of where you can retrofit something. So what you need is exactly what you said. You need a sensor, and then you need a switch that is switching on and off. Every country has slightly different regulation when it comes to water heaters. So the solutions looks a little bit differently. What we have experienced is that the main thing you can save is actually not to let the water heater go on immediately after you've been in the shower, because you normally shower in the morning, let's say 7 o'clock or something, and then the water heater stays on for 3 hours. And that's typically the 3 hours where the energy is most expensive. So the very simple algorithm that we have been deploying is basically avoid the most expensive hours and then utilize the cheap hours afterwards, but do not let the temperature fall below a certain threshold inside the water tank for too long of a time. So there are a couple of ifs and buts, but this works. And the point is that when you go to work during the morning, you don't need 70 degrees in your water tank anyway. You need it when you get back home or during the evening.
It's true, but there might be negative energy prices during lunchtime because it's summer.
Which is why it's important that this is an adaptive algorithm. So it doesn't just go after the clock, it reads the prices. So what we do is that we feed prices into this, and then this schedule is made every day based on the prices and based on whether you have used any water or not. So these things are definitely possible to solve, and I think you're bringing up a very good point. We shouldn't try to approach the green energy transition by changing all the equipment and infrastructure that we have. We should try to figure out solutions where we can use what we have as long as we can but basically enable it to become a little bit smarter.
But what is the average behavior you're seeing with Tibber customers, where it all works? Let's say they have the Tibber Pulse, though information is fed on a regular level via the API into your network. They let's say they are like a high consuming household, 10,000 kilowatt hours, which they can, where let's say 6,000 kilowatt hours, there's a potential for some flexibility because you don't need them on the spot. Obviously, if you want to use a stove in the evening, then you need the energy regardless what the price is. But let's say 6,000 or like 50% or so can be put under this kind of flexibility regime. What kind of behavior do you see with the Tibber customers? Do they really use it this way? And are they like saving money then? Or are they consuming more cheaper energy and paying the same amount of money?
That's a great question. I think I want to use a different example with the ones who have an electric car. A lot of the community around Tibber is electric car owners, and we are now seeing a huge explosion in terms of electric car penetration in the markets. So we've been working a lot with that. So what happens is that an electric car owner comes home, plugs in the car, and then we send over a schedule. Do not use it at 5 o'clock. Let's rather charge it at 1 during the night. That's a very simple case. It's a very simple use case. And we see that on average, these customers are saving 20 to 30% on their energy bill for their car consumption, which then stands for half of their, between a third and a half of their energy consumption in Germany. So there we see very clear patterns. The ones who are plugging in heat pumps, we see the same thing. So we do see that there are savings, but we even see savings with the ones using the Tibber app without having anything connected, because they're becoming more conscious about their consumption. And one of the teachings in the app, we have a section called analysis, is that we try to tell the customer, where do you spend your energy on? So basically, is it on heating? Is it on appliances that are always on, or is it other kinds of things? And we're not able to tell that exactly, but we're comparing your pattern with others where we have known places. So we're kind of indicating that you probably spend most of your energy on this or that or the other. And based on that, you as a customer, you're learning that, well, it's not the lights in the ceiling which is the problem in my home. It might be the heating, or it might be other things. So we're trying to teach the customers to understand their home. Just like you have a pulse watch, based on when you're out walking, you can see how your heartbeat is working, and we're trying to use the same heartbeat, so kind of the kilowatt hours of the home, in order to create a curve and compare versus others, so that we can put a diagnosis on your home. So where does your home spend the most energy? So it's kind of a similar thing. So we see that the ones who are connecting things, so connecting a car or a heat pump or a heating system and so on, they're on average saving 10, 20 and up to 30%, depending a little bit on where you live in the world and the original energy prices. And secondly, we see that we're able to influence the behavior on when are you actually using energy. So during this energy price crisis we've been through, a lot of the customers were opening up the app once a day just to figure out where is the lowest point of the day and highest point of the day, because that difference could be 3 or 4 or even 5 times as expensive in the highest versus the lowest priced hour. And that really makes a difference when you're, using appliances at home.
What is the so I just googled like what is the average consumption of a water heater in Germany for a multi-person household? Like it's somewhere between like 500 kilowatt hours and 1,500 kilowatt hours a year. So I would assume that's even more than the electric car because many people only drive like 10,000 kilometers a year. Charge not always at home, but maybe on the autobahn or in the city or wherever. Like energy is like kind of cheap though. Water heaters might be even the bigger market than like electric vehicles. And I'm just asking this because like over like the past episodes of Energiezone, it became so clear it's not about lighting at all. It's usually about like heating water, yes. Some obviously electric cars a bit, but heating homes is like the biggest. A home is the biggest battery, yes. Obviously, and nobody can wait for smart pumps, right? So there must be like ways to connect like the old devices a bit earlier. Yeah, maybe it's more like fixed schedule every day based on some algorithms. Like within the week, you're out of home after 7 or 8 a.m. Then let's deactivate the water heater or the heat pump, or let the house cool down like 2 degrees, and at 4 o'clock or so, make it a bit warmer. But if I think about all this like different scenarios, all these different potential algorithms, so it becomes hyper complex. So because you might have a vacation, or there might be kids at home. Then like on Tuesday, kids are always at home at 2 p.m. So they need like a warm kitchen at least, or like a warm room. It's like it's like even one house can have like an unlimited amount of scenarios. Let's forget my old house. Let's get into a new one, a smart house already, where like everything is kind of connected. All the rooms do have their own sensor, and you can steer it based on your vacation schedule, your school schedule, your work schedule, your whatever schedule. So how far are we in this kind of making the consumption smart? Is it really about, because energy saving only entered the game like 2 or 3 years ago. Before it was all about like comfort and not so much about saving potential. So how far are we?
Wow. In terms of, if you are to have a perfect solution that is perfectly optimal for an individual home, that requires that you customize a solution, and it requires a lot of work. And we attempted making automations of that, and then we realized that is not a rational way to do it today. Maybe in a few years' time, it's possible to get there based on new types of machine learning, new types of AI, artificial intelligence, and so on. Where we are today, we're able to do this in a very optimal way when it comes to certain appliances. So electric cars, yes, that's perfectly. That's kind of the best example. When it comes to heating, well, then you can adjust based on the main heating source in your home, but not based on each and individual room and so on and so forth. But you're able to do that, I would say, to 60-70% of the full savings potential. So let's say that your full savings potential is 100%. We're able to achieve 60-70% savings already, maybe up to 80. And then the last percentages of savings, they're hard to get to, because then you're starting to tweak. Am I home today or am I not? What about this and that room? But I mean, going from zero savings to 60-70%, that's what we are concentrating on, because that's how you can simplify a lot of things, and it's getting usable and possible for users to use it. And then so basically the closer you want to get to 100% of the savings potential, the harder it gets and the more complex it gets. So our philosophy is that let's just ensure that these 60-80% is becoming available to as many people as possible, to as many houses as possible. And then it really doesn't matter about the rest today, because it's much more important that let's say 40% or 60% are getting access to that potential rather than 2 or 3 or 4% are getting access to 100% of the savings potential. So that's a bit of our
I 100% agree. I just wanted to understand. So it's like, even like for a super, super modern home, it still feels like a very custom solution because it needs to get access to information from my Google Calendar, maybe from the kids calendar, or when like there's like so much information that needs to be controlled and managed. Which leads me like to the next question because
I just want to share a story there because on that. You're completely right. I've had friends, and I've also attempted myself to fully automate the home, to be fully correct, etc. And then what happens? Well, suddenly comes a use case that I didn't think about, and then the whole system crashes, and everything is, well, you're not getting to that 100% anyway, which I think illustrates that there is a threshold between optimal and what is possible to use.
And then if you look at the time you've spent into like building the perfect scenario versus like the savings potential, then it doesn't make sense anymore. That I get, but listening to you leads me like to the next question because obviously there might be a limit getting all these informations into like the Tibber ecosystem. Then the question will be, could you also give access to the Tibber information? So let's say I have, I don't know, I might manage my home via an Alexa smart home, whatever thing, or an Apple smart home. And then I could feed like the, for example, I'm using Hornbach, which is a DIY provider in Germany. And I could feed like the Hornbach system with the pricing information because you might be able to give me like the prices for the next day or 2 days. And the Hornbach system or the Apple system or the Amazon system, they already have like access to all of the smart devices, the smart power plug adapters, maybe even heating pump or whatever, and they can start managing it with your pricing information. Is this also an offering in your platform strategy?
Yes, it is, because exactly to that point that every house is slightly different. So many are happy with, using the basics and kind of main use cases. But then if you're having different systems or different structures, you wanna, here's an example. Somebody wanted to have a Philips Hue light in the corner that was starting to be red if the energy price was high, and green when the energy price was low. So they asked us, can you make this? And we sat down and figured out, I don't think that's for us to solve. So what we did was to open up an API so that anybody of our customers who want to get access to price information, real-time energy data, and a lot of other information, they can open it up and use that information directly into their own system. So we have made an open API. We made integrations with smart home systems like home control, home assistant, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of open APIs and ready-made modules made by our community to actually make usage of. We even have a developer portal where if you're a smart home developer yourself, you can just sit down and start digging into our API.
Interesting. So this Philips or this lamp thing is interesting. So this Philips Hue lamps usually can provide like different LED colors, right? Red, yes, green.
Correct.
Okay. And based on the price, so dark red is super expensive, bright green super cheap. Go in the shower now. So take the bath. So it's really cheap to consume now. Okay, interesting case. That's a really interesting case. Okay, I have a couple of other geek questions afterwards, but we've spent too much time on my personal challenges already. Maybe let's get back to the Tibber business itself. So the energy crisis that came up like in the last like 2 years, especially in Germany, that must have been like an El Dorado for you, like in winning awareness for the whole topic, and obviously getting a lot of like consumer requests. So how did it go? What have you been able to fulfill all the all the wishes and requests from consumers or potential retail partners? Could you give us like an insight what happened over the last 18 months?
Yeah, I mean, you're quite correct. This whole era, the last couple of years, have been quite extreme when it comes to prices. And we've seen it from two different angles. One is that there was a huge spike in interest. So a lot of customers were basically hammering into our system at the same time. New customers and existing customers coming in at the same time. So we got a lot of traffic in all of our markets. And at the same time, we also got a lot of questions because customers starting to really address the question, my home, my energy bill is this and that this month. What can I do? So we spent a lot of time educating customers about what they could do in terms of managing their energy way better. So there was a lot of that stuff happening. We also saw that this surge of people wanting to become more independent from, let's call it the old energy companies. There was a lot of stuff happening there as well. As a consequence of high prices, but also I think that's an interesting thing going forward, that we see that energy independence seems to be a thing which has been imported into Europe from America, where we see that people want solar and batteries and low energy consumption at home and controllable stuff, so they don't need to rely on what is happening out in the world. A few seeds have been planted there as well. So that is more of a trend that we are looking forward as a consequence, long-term consequence of that energy crisis. But a lot of education was needed, and a lot of new customers and new customer groups even were coming into the Tibber and Tibber ecosystem. And then we got like any success story, like any growth story, the amount of requests from customers about, can you make this or can you help us with that? That is a challenge to handle. And that was the case, that we could simply not do all of what we were pulled into. We could do only a fraction of that. So it required a lot of work filtering what should we spend the time on and what could we help customers about and what could we not. So that's been a big challenge. So unfortunately, we haven't been able to help all customer groups. And we have had to really stay to the core of the value prop that we want to deliver. So we got attempted, I don't know how many ideas and different pitches we got, but saying no to a lot of things was a really hard thing to do as well.
Got it. Are you do you publish your customer numbers, or can you give us just a raw ballpark? How many customers are using in Germany?
No, we haven't been publishing our numbers, and I think we've attempted publishing numbers before, but then they're always being interpreted as the number of subscribers or the number of users or the numbers of overall customers. So it's a lot of different definitions floating around there. So currently we haven't been doing that until we figure out a correct way to do that consequently, basically we're able to compare apple with apples.
But the growth trajectory, obviously based on the interest of venture capital, must be a really cool one. That is leading me to the next question. So what is your competition? Is your competition my local energy provider that tomorrow starts also with a flexible energy tariff, which question is, how could he get it? He has no pulse, and the smart meters that had been rolled out are not able to give the information back to the provider. Good question. Yeah, but who is your competitor?
Well, we certainly have competitors. I think in our home markets, we've seen similar companies like Tibber popping up. We're also seeing that the existing classical energy suppliers. They are making usage of new technology coming in there. There are coming dynamic tariffs. There are coming apps into the sphere. And I think what differentiates the new ones versus the old ones is the business model, where a lot of the old companies, they're still making money on the number of kilowatt hours they're delivering, so maximizing margins there. Whereas new entrants like Tibber, we're trying to figure out a new model so that we can be transparent about prices, but figure out a different way of monetizing. So we are able to say that we're on the same, we have the same incentive as the customers. And then we see, I'm excited to see if we're going to see any of these crossovers in industry. I've seen that a couple of times where companies are coming in from the telco side or from the e-commerce side, trying to make a technology and energy offering combined. We've seen a couple of those examples. So we're tracking a number of those, but I'm more inclined to say that it's really the new entrants, the ones who are coming in with a fresh new business model. I would call the competitors, whereas the classical energy suppliers are, well, they're definitely. But a different perspective to that is that one of the biggest competition points is passivity, so that customers are not aware that there is an alternative out there. They're just used to, paying something on an auto direct debit solution. You're paying 50 euros a month for energy, and that's what you do. You haven't really figured out that there is an alternative. So that might be the biggest competition. It's the competition about attention, and attention that, here is a better alternative for you.
Okay, interesting. Then when I did some research on your solution, and obviously I stuck around like the Tibber Pulse solution, which is kind of your hardware hack. And then the only like bigger rolled out smart meter providers, from what I know, are the ones that came with solar panels. Because if you're like installing solar panels in your house, you're on top of it. You have to use a smart meter, which is which usually manages like what of the solar consumption goes into the battery, what goes into your wall box, what goes into your house, what goes into the grid. And behind this, there's the old meter with the infrared signals. But the information in those smart meters, that's like raw consumption and production energy. Is your system able to use this information also instead of the pulse? Because a pulse,
yes,
it's something I have to put on top, and maybe if it's like not 100% like correctly installed, and then it's like a small battery in it which might run out. And the question is, so there must be now, I don't know, 1 million solar panels already, like with smart meters rolled out. Is this an information base you can use in interface?
Yes. So the new kind of smart meters in Germany, I think they're called IMSYS. So intelligente message. Well, I'm not able to pronounce that word completely. But the short answer is yes, and we even prefer that solution. So we're working together with many of the bigger grid companies in Germany today, so that customers can get a complete package with a public and a new smart meter. And then you don't need the pulse. You can still have the pulse in addition in order to get real-time data and consumption story there, but we can already use the smart meter systems, and we're gonna extend the number of collaborations we have together with grid companies across Germany in order to roll it out faster. So,
and what is your perception here? Is it like, are they open for such a collaboration, or do they want to protect their customer interface and say, no, I don't want to have like Tibber in here or anything else, otherwise they might steal our access?
Well, the case is that first of all, it's a standardized interface. So if you are a grid company, you need to comply to certain standards. So you need to share that information. So that is required by law. So we are able to get access to it. Either they want it or not. But we also see that there is a great interest around Tibber from the grid companies, because as a grid company, they are responsible for managing and operating the grid. And then they might own a supplier in addition, but that's a separate company or company unit. But they have the responsible for the grid. And since they're rolling out official smart meters, they have been really interested in making contact with us, because they need to find good use cases so that you as a customer can make usage of the data that you're able to generate during the smart meter. So I would say so far we've seen great interest and a lot of collaboration from the grid companies in Germany, and I'm really happy to see that.
Okay. What is your biggest expansion mark above like the markets you're like now in? Will you go into the US, or is it a market? I don't know. I see like the hourly prices or daily prices on this like pricing chart maps that are now published on Twitter like every day, and it's very expensive in Italy, I think, even Spain, because they are like lagging behind in building solar panels and wind energy grids. So Germany is obviously, because there was a lot of discussion around, maybe the biggest market, but what's your view on that?
Well, Germany is an exciting market, but we also opened up Netherlands last year, which was a direct hit for us. So that was a good one. But Netherlands is probably recognized being a small market from a German perspective. From a Norwegian perspective, it's a rather big market. So it depends on your perspective or origination. But we also clearly look into the other markets across Europe. As you say, Italy, there is a big demand, and they have a lot of smart meters. The same in Spain. The smart meter infrastructure in Spain is quite good. And I think France is a very it's a market which the amount of electricity is quite large compared to gas, which also makes it interesting. And then obviously you have UK, but UK has had a lot of problem with regulations about a law stating there, a law that in effect has pushed a lot of suppliers going bankrupt over the last 3 years. So it's a lot of difficulties in the UK. But in general, Europe is quite mature and a good scene over the coming years, whereas the US, so-called the land of the free, they're not that free when it comes to energy regulations. Only 13 of the 50 states in the US has a free energy market. And in there, actually, Europe is way better.
Interesting. We might need a second episode. We are already like above an hour, and I need to ask you like all the geek questions, which I don't want to bore the podcast listeners with. Ed, it was super, super exciting and interesting already. Thank you for your time, and we will definitely discuss a second episode soon.
Thank you so much.
Das war's. Nächste Woche geht's weiter mit Vanessa Stützle von Lucom. Und wenn ihr Lust habt, das auch mal vor Ort zu diskutieren, dann vergesst euch nicht, zur Project A Knowledge Konferenz zu registrieren oder zu bewerben, euch ein Ticket zu kaufen. Oder eine Woche später ist dann die Seamless in Berlin, eine ziemlich coole E-Commerce-Konferenz. Da moderiere ich an den beiden Vormittagen. Nehmen wahrscheinlich auch noch den ein oder anderen Podcast dort auf. Ich stelle die beiden Links nochmal in die Shownotes und wir sehen uns oder hören uns am Donnerstag.